If you love Dance Dance Revolution, but it's actually the French Revolution, and you're a robot dancer, then the Dancer class in Steel Rising is for you. This fast, agile class focuses on critical hits and immobilization, and today we're going to go through my dancer build for Steel Rising. Let's go. Let me know in the comments down below what class you would like me to do next, if there's any particular builds you would like help with. We'll start out with character creation. Now, as the dancer class, you start out with the armored fans and agility +3 and vigor +2. The armored fans themselves is a solid option at the beginning of the game with the shield special move. That isn't too bad. I don't personally like these fans. I will be replacing them later on, but your starting kit as a dancer is actually pretty solid, all things considered. How to play as a dancer class or this build in general is you will be dodging mostly all of the damage coming towards you. You won't be shielding too much, and that's why I don't really like the armored fans. It feels counterintuitive to this fast, agile kind of build. Now, as an agility weapon with the fans or any of the other agility weapons, you will focus on immobilization. Now, what immobilization is when the reticule on the target, that little diamond, fills all the way up, it immobilizes them or like breaks their stance. You can then follow up with a critical hit. This is the only way you can initiate critical hits, and also the agility weapons are the primary way that you do immobilization damage to enemies. All weapons do immobilization damage, but agility weapons are primarily where you get that immobilization damage from. So really what you'll be focusing on here in combat is increasing that immobilization marker, breaking their stance, and then following up with a critical hit. And we will be buffing our critical hits with some of our modules in our setup, so these critical hits are super powerful. I'm also using the fire and ice weapon as my secondary weapon because I personally just love this weapon. Essentially what the special move here is it's a counter attack, except it also applies fire and frost damage. This is fantastic for some of the larger enemies that have really slow and easy to counter attacks that you can then freeze them and set them on fire at the same time and just melt through their health. I really like the combination of using this weapon and this counter attack weapons, and I'm also using the Lady Macbeth fans as my primary weapon for that immobilization build up because of the flying daggers special move on the Lady Macbeth fans, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about attributes. Now, your primary attributes for this class is going to be agility. Agility will increase your agility scaling with these weapons that we're using here, and also increases your mobilization, which is super important. Your secondary stat is probably going to be vigor. This increases your endurance, so your ability to dodge as well as counter attack and attack in general, and your critical hit multiplier. And because we're going to be breaking their stances and doing these critical hits, the higher that multiplier is, the better. And for your secondary stats, you're probably going to want potentially power and durability. Durability for that little bit of health, and power just for that tiny little bit of extra damage, especially with fire and ice. I haven't really got the perfect stats here because I was just tinkering a lot with my dancer as it was the first class I played, but you can kind of see exactly where the classes should go in terms of their attribute setup. For your module setups, we're also focusing on this particular line. You want the grade 3 destruction module, which will increase your physical damage significantly. The grade 3 critical repair allows critical attacks to restore a significant amount of health. It's just an easy way to get some health back because you will do those critical hits a lot, and health back is always a good thing, especially in this game where you don't really have a whole lot of oil like barrette charges or healing potion charges. It's always good to get that little bit extra back. And grade 3 critical damage increases the critical hit multiplier for each point invested in agility. Now, because we are maxing out our agility, this multiplier is going to give you like 2 to 3% just increases to your critical hit multiplier, makes those attacks super powerful. We're also using the grade 3 efficient countering, which will increase the counter attack and shield windows and double the physical damage that you do during those ensuing counter attacks. So this means that the window where they swing at you and then you can actually block the attack or like counter attack the attack, that window is larger, then it increases the damage, and it's just a perfect module to use with fire and ice to increase that counter attack damage, which is the primary reason you'll use fire and ice, is for those counter attacks rather than just using it as a standard weapon. Though it is a solid standard weapon, I do like the dual sword setup, and they are agility and power based, which fits perfectly into this build. The gear that we're using here for your armor, really you can just wear whatever you like, it doesn't really matter too much. The main thing is your weapons. Now, you do start out with the armored fans as mentioned, but the shield special move here isn't super powerful. I would be replacing these with the frosted fans that you can get very early on pretty quickly, just to give you a special move that's actually worth using. I initially invested a lot into using the Falcon and Saber dual swords until I found the fire and ice swords as my main or secondary weapon, because they are really good weapons, the dual swords that have decent attack animation. So I was using that primarily, though I didn't like the special move on these, and when I found the fire and ice, they were absolutely perfect. So the Lady Macbeth fans will be your primary fans. Now, the special move on here, the Flying Daggers, is a ranged attack, so it's perfect for this kind of build. You can stay at a decent distance to be able to increase the immobilization because of the Flying Daggers attack, and then once they break that stance, you can then run up to them and critical hit. Really has good synergy with this overall build, and it also gives you flexibility to do some range damage, and then if you want to get in close quarters, you can use the Fire and Ice to do those counterattacks. Plenty of flexibility into that overall setup. Some general tips for playing this build now. Alchemical capsules are super important for this build, especially for the Flying Daggers special move on the Lady Macbeth fans. So you will use them a solid amount, and you can always buy them from the boutique. You don't have to necessarily go and farm enemies to just get the 1 or 2 that you do get from killing them. You can just go into the boutique and buy them. They have an unlimited amount there, so you can always keep your stocks pretty high. I usually try to keep myself at around the 100, potentially 200 mark as I was exploring, just so I could use them freely and not have to worry about eventually running out. When you are using the counterattack with the Fire and Ice, you might not necessarily want to wait to trigger another counterattack to get that Fire or Frost buildup on the enemy. Once you've unlocked the alchemical attacks, the ram, the dash, and the lightning, you can actually use this to finish off that last little bit of buildup, so you can actually trigger the affliction status on them. So say if you blocked the enemy with the counterattack and they need like that, just that little bit extra frost or fire damage, you could then use ram or the dash just to fill up that bar, so then you don't have to worry about waiting for them to attack again. You can get those attacks off a little bit quicker. It just helps with the general flow of the combat. Now, the larger enemies are so much easier to counter because they have the most obvious, like big wind-up animations. You can counter them super easy. I found them the best to counter. Some of the quicker, smaller enemies, it is hard to see those initial wind-up animations, so you may struggle using the Fire and Ice for them, and it's probably better then to switch to the Lady Macbeth fans for that Flying Daggers attack, but you can kind of figure out how both of those work together. You can also use the petrification grenades to increase the immobilization damage without having to get close to targets until you get the Lady Macbeth fans, or just an easy way to maximize your immobilization damage. I did also forget to mention it in the modules section as well, but the modules that we mentioned, there are lower grades of these higher scale modules. So when you're exploring, before you get to the end game where you get these grade 3 versions, if you've got the earlier grades versions of them, it's not too bad to actually use them just in the meantime until you get those higher level options. You could also drop the counterattack as a secondary and use something else to increase your immobilization damage, or just a different module if you didn't want to go the counterattack route with the Fire and Ice. Though I found that these two weapons pair perfectly together, especially with the agility setup that we have gone here for this build. And because we are using two different weapon types, a fan and a dual sword, they will have different attack animations, and it's also worth noting that all weapons will have unique dodge and like jump or sprint animations as well. So make sure you're playing around with those and find the animations that you do like. I really enjoyed like jumping and then using the heavy attack to slam back down into the ground. And because of this build is about being fast and agile, you won't use a lot of the heavy attacks really at all, like charging up. We don't have a huge balance, so we won't be able to take some hits when we're charging those heavy attacks. And you also don't want to stand still for too long with this build that isn't got a whole lot of health, and you want to keep moving. So we won't use those heavy attacks, but if you do want to get them off, the jump and then the heavy attack, which creates a ground slam, is often a valuable way to get those heavy attacks off if you did want to use them. The only time that I would charge up a heavy attack is if I have frozen the enemy and I have that time to fully charge it up to deal that heavy damage. Let me know in the comments down below your next class that you would like me to do. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.